The Colorado high country in the year of our story, a wall of mountains, snow on the teeth of them pine going black as the light fails, in one road a single thin cut, climbing into all that silence. Follow it up, past a gate of worked iron no poor man could afford, to a house that should not exist out here. 3 stories of stone and lamplight glowing like something that does not want to be found. And at the bottom of it all, in a clearing at the cold end of the road, a young woman steps down from a stagecoach with a carpet bag in both hands. No house, no husband, just 3 bearded men standing in a line watching her the way you watch weather coming. She has crossed half a country on the promise in a letter. She does not yet know the letter lied. She does not know whose hand truly wrote it. And she does not know that somewhere below that bright house, a debt is waiting in the dark, already coming up the road for her. She stepped down from the stagecoach into nothing. No house, no husband, no road that went anywhere a person would want to go. Just 3 men standing in a line at the edge of a clearing, bearded, still, broad as barn doors. The wind came down off the peaks and went straight through her good traveling coat like the wool was made of paper, and Evelyn Harmon stood there with her carpet bag in both hands and her heart going like a trapped bird, and she thought one clear thought before the fear swallowed it. The letter had promised a home. The letter had lied. The driver did not even climb down. He pitched her trunk off the back into the dust, tipped his hat at the 3 men, the way a man tips his hat at something he does not want to be near, and snapped the reins. And then the coach was gone. Wheels and dust and the creak of leather, smaller and smaller, down the cut in the trees, until the sound of it was just the wind again. And the wind did not say anything kind. 22 years old, a daughter of Boston, a girl who had been taught her letters and her sums and how to set a fevered man's bones, and who had answered an advertisement in a newspaper because there was nothing left to sell except herself. And now here she was, at the bottom of a mountain, with a carpet bag and a locket, and the cold coming on, and 3 strangers looking at her like she was weather they had not asked for. Before we ride up that mountain with her, let me say one thing to you. If you have ever stood somewhere, you did not choose holding everything you owned in 2 hands, waiting on a life that had not come yet. Stay with me tonight. Subscribe if this is your kind of story, and tell me down in the comments where you are listening from. Now, back to the girl in the red coat, and the 3 men who would not say a word. The tallest one moved first. He came forward out of the line slow and easy, the way a big man moves when he has learned the hard way that fast frightens people. Hat pulled low, a coat worn soft at the elbows, hands that looked like they had been carved out of the same wood as the trees behind him, scarred across the knuckles, steady as stone. He stopped a careful distance away. Not close. He knew about distance, this one. She could see that he knew. "Miss Harmon," he said, not a question. Just her name set down between them like a stone laid on a table. "You are Mr. Calloway," she said, "one of them." And there it was, the first thread of the thing coming loose. One of them. She felt it move through her like cold water. Because the letter had said a husband. The letter had said a man. Singular. A man with a homestead and a need for a wife and the means to settle a family's debts. The letter had not said one of them. The letter had not said 3. "There has been some mistake," she said. Her voice came out steadier than the inside of her. She was proud of that for exactly 1 second. "No mistake. The advertisement said." "I know what it said." He did not raise his voice. He never once in all the time she would come to know him raised his voice at her. But there was a weight under the quiet, like the weight of snow on a roof. "It said a homestead. It said a wife. It said the debts your family owed in Boston would be paid to the last cent." A pause, the wind. "Every word of that is true. And the part where there are 3 of you, that part," he said, the letter left out. Twist the first, and she felt it land in her stomach like a swallowed stone. She had crossed half a country on the strength of a piece of paper, and the paper had kept a thing back from her, and now she was standing in a clearing 40 miles from the nearest town with no way back and no way forward except up. The second man laughed, short, not cruel exactly, but not warm either. He was the same height near enough, same dark hair, the family stamped on his face like a maker's mark. Except where the first man was still water, this one was a creek in spring, all noise and motion, and his eyes went over her like he was pricing a horse. "She is going to bolt," he said to the first man, not to her. "Look at her, she is already gone in her head, halfway back to Boston." "Gabriel," the first man said. "Just the name." But the second man shut his mouth. The third one had not moved at all. He stood a little apart, younger, his beard not yet grown and full, and he watched her with a quiet that was different from his brother's quiet. Softer, almost. She did not have a word for it yet. Later she would. Later she would understand that the youngest brother had been watching her face since the coach door opened, watching it the way a man watches a candle he is afraid the wind will take. But that was later. In the clearing, all she knew was that two of them frightened her in two different ways, and the third one did something to her she could not name and did not like. "I am cold," she said. "I have come a very long way, and I would like, before I freeze to death at the bottom of Summian's mountain, to understand what exactly I have agreed to." The first man, Silas, looked at her for a long moment, and something crossed his face. Not a smile. He was not, she would learn, a man who spent his smiles cheaply, but something near the country of one. "Fair," he said. "Get into the wagon. I will tell you on the way up. And if you do not like the sound of it, you tell me at the tee, and I will bring you back down myself. And put me on a coach that comes how often?" "Tuesdays. And today is Thursday." She did the arithmetic. 5 days. 5 days at the bottom of a mountain with three men she did not know, or 5 days getting back what was left of her dignity and carrying it home to a father who was dying anyway, in a debt that would bury them all. Some choice, some grand and generous choice the world had laid out for her. She got in the wagon. Now, before the wheels turn, you have to know how a Boston girl ends up at the bottom of a Colorado mountain in the first place. You have to know what was behind her, or you will never understand why she did not run. Her father was Josiah Harmon, and once before she was born, he had been a Western man. She knew it the way children know the shape of a thing through a closed door. He did not speak of those years. There was a tin box he kept and did not open in front of her. There was a way he went quiet when men at church told stories of the territories, a stillness that came down over him like a shade pulled on a window. He had come back at East before she drew. Her first breath had married her. Mother had put on a clean collar and taken a clerk's stool in a counting house, and had spent the rest of his life being a smaller man than he was. Boston did that to him. Boston did that to a lot of men who had been big somewhere else. Then the counting house failed. Then the bad winter of her father's lungs, the cough that had always been with him, going from a thing in the corner of a room to a thing that filled it. Then the doctor who came once and frowned and named a sum, and the medicines that cost more than the rent, and the rent itself climbing. Her mother, Della Harmon, took in sewing until her fingers bled at the tips, and she hid them in her apron so Evelyn would not see. Her father coughed in the next room in a rhythm Evelyn learned the way you learn a clock. And then the man from the bank came to the door with a paper and was polite about it, which was somehow worse than if he had not been. They had until spring. Evelyn was educated. That was the cruel joke of it. Her mother had taught her to read before she was 5, and to cipher before she was 8, had drilled her in fevers and poultices, and how to stitch a wound closed with a clean needle and a steady hand, because Della Harmon believed a woman should be able to save a life and balance a book and never be at the mercy of a man's competence or the lack of it. Evelyn could do all of it, and none of it was worth a single dollar in a city where a girl with no name and no money and no people was just a mouth. She found the advertisement folded in a newspaper a neighbor had left on the stoop. Strong woman wanted. Mountain homestead in Colorado Territory. Hard life. Honest man. debts of the family to be settled in full upon agreement. She read it standing in the cold stereo, well, so her mother would not see her face. She read it 11 times, and on the 11th time the words stopped being words and became a door. Not a good door. She was not a fool. She knew exactly what kind of door it was. But it was a door, and behind every other one in her life was a room with no floor. She did not tell her father. She told her mother only at the end, when the trunk was packed and the answer already sent, and the man's reply already returned with a bank draft folded inside it. A draft so large her mother had to sit down on the kitchen chair and put her hand flat on the table to keep the room from tipping. Her mother did not cry. Her mother looked at her for a long time and then said the only thing there was to say, which was, "You do not have to do this," in a voice that told them both she did. "Yes," Evelyn had said, "I do." She kissed her father's forehead while he slept so she would not have to lie to his face. She took her mother's locket because her mother pressed it into her hand and folded her fingers over it and would not take no. And she got on a train going west with a carpet bag and a trunk and a piece of paper that promised a home. So you see, by the time the wagon started up the mountain with the three silent brothers in the cold coming down there, was nothing behind her at all. Just a closed door and a dying man and a debt. The girl had no way to go but up. Remember that. It matters what comes after. The road climbed. It was not much of a road, a track. Switchbacks cut into the side of the mountain pine, crowding so close on both sides the branches dragged the wagon's cover, and below them, every time the trees opened, a drop that made her press her boots into the floorboards. The air thinned and went sharp in her chest. The light went long and gold, and then began very quietly to leave. Silas drove. His brothers had taken horses and ridden ahead. Gabriel fast and loud, the youngest one, whose name she did not have yet, slow and last, looking back once before the trees took him. For a long while neither of them spoke. She had decided she would not be the one to break it. She was wrong about that, the way she would be wrong about a great many things on that mountain. But she did not know it yet, and the silence sat between them like a third passenger. "You will want to hear it now," he said at last. "The arrangement. I would have wanted to hear it in Boston. It would not have fit on the paper. Try the wagon." He almost did the thing with his mouth again. Almost. "You marry one of us," he said. My name on the paper, my word that the debts in Boston are paid the day you say yes, paid in full. Not a thread of it owed by your people again." A pause for the horse on the turn. "You live in the house, the three of us in it. My brothers do not touch you. They do not speak to you in any way you would not want a brother to speak to you. That part is not a request. That part I have already told them, and they heard me." "How comforting," she said. "A house with three strangers and a rule." "You wanted plain. That is plain." "And what do you get," she said, "out of a wife who did not want you? Honestly, because I cannot make it add. A man pays a stranger's debts across a country to marry a woman he has never seen, and the reason on the page was a homestead and a need, and I do not believe the page." The wagon went on a while. "I get tired," he said, "of eating alone." She turned and looked at him then, full. The first time she really looked at his face instead of around it, because that was not the answer she had braced for. She had braced for land, for sons, for a back that needed working, and a stove that needed tending, and all the practical hungers a man dresses up as marriage. Not a sentence so small and so plain it had nowhere to hide. "That," she said, "is the worst reason I have ever heard." "Maybe. It is not even a reason. It is a complaint." "It is the truth," he said. "You said you wanted the truth. The truth does not have to be a good speech." She had no answer for that. She filed it away. She was a girl who filed things away, who kept a ledger in her head, the way her mother had taught her hands to keep one on paper, and she wrote that line in it, because she did not yet trust him, but she had begun against every sense she owned to believe him. "Then I want terms," she said. "Name them." 6 months. She had thought about this on the train. She had thought about little else. I will not say yes to forever to a man I met an hour ago. 6 months. And in those 6 months, you give me your word on two things, and if you cannot give it, I get out of this wagon and I walk to your Tuesday coach myself. The two things. You never raise a hand to me in anger. Not once, not ever. Not the worst day of your life. Her voice did not shake. She made sure of it. And if at the end of 6 months I want to go, you let me go. You do not argue it. You do not make it hard. You take me wherever I want to be taken, and we are finished, and you do not follow. The track leveled for a moment. He let the horses have it. She watched the side of his face and could not read it, and she hated that she could not because she was good at faces. She had always been good at faces, and his was a closed door, same as her father's tin box. You have my word, he said, quiet, like a thing set down to stay. On both. She let out a breath she had not known she was keeping. But I want one thing back, he said. Of course you do. 6 months, he said. You give it 6 real ones. You do not spend them with your bag packed by the door and your mind made up the first night. You do not decide what I am before you have watched me be it. He looked at her, then one look, and there was something in it she would spend a long time understanding. That is all. Do not make up your mind about me before you have the right to. Fine, she said. Fine. 6 months. 6 months, he said, and put his eyes back on the road, and she sat there with her heart doing something complicated and unwelcome, and the wagon kept climbing into the dark, and she truly believed at that moment that she had heard the worst of the surprises this mountain had for her. She was so wrong. You already know she was wrong. Wait until you see how wrong. The gate came out of the trees like something from a story her mother used to read her by a thinner fire than these men would ever sit beside. She saw the stone first, 2 pillars cut and set taller than the wagon, taller than the men, the kind of stone that does not happen on a mountain by accident, the kind of stone a great many hands and a great deal of money carry up a track on purpose. And between the pillars, iron. A gate of black iron worked by a smith who had been paid well to make it beautiful and worked into the iron in letters she could read even in the failing light, because she had been taught her letters before she was 5 a name. Hollow Mountain. What is this? She said. Her voice had gone strange in her own ears. He did not answer. He climbed down. He swung the gate and it moved without a sound, oiled, cared for, and he led the horses through and closed it behind them, and the track on the other side was not a track anymore. It was a road, graded, drained, lined where the drop was worst with a fence of split rail that someone walked and mended. And she sat very still in the wagon with both hands around the locket at her throat because the inside of her had begun to understand a thing the outside of her was not ready for. They came around the shoulder of the hill, and there it was. Not a cabin, not a shack, not the rough, hard, hopeful little house the word homestead had been building in her mind for 2,000 miles. A house, stone and timber, and 3 stories of it, set into the hillside like it had grown there, wide porches and tall windows, and behind the windows lamplight, warm and gold and many, smoke standing up from more chimneys than she could count in one look. Below it, around it, the shapes of other buildings in the last of the light. A barn the size of a church, a stable, a row of cabins with their own small, honest smoke. Twist the second, and it did not land in her stomach this time. It landed somewhere higher and harder behind her ribs, in the place where a person keeps the story they tell themselves about what is happening to them. No, she said, just that, flat, stupid with it. Yes, he said, you are the poorest man in 3 counties. Her voice climbed. She heard it climb and could not stop it. The whole coach knew it. The driver would not stand near you. The town, everyone, the poorest. Everyone thinks what I want them to think. You lied. I never told a single soul I was poor, he said, and his voice did not climb to meet hers. It stayed down where it lived, which made hers feel like a child's. I let them decide it. There is a difference, and you are smart enough to know there is even angry. It is the same thing. It is not. He set the brake. He did not look at her yet. He looked at the house, his house, all that light, and there was something in his face that was not pride. She had braced for pride. It was not that. It was closer to a man looking at a thing he had built so high, he could not always remember why. Lying is when I make you believe something false. I have never made anyone believe anything. I just stopped correcting them. Now he looked at her. And before you ask me why a man would live in a town like a beggar when he has all this, ask yourself something first. If I had come to Boston in a good coat, a rich man, a stranger with money, and offered to pay your father's debts, what would your mother have said? She opened her mouth, she closed it, because she knew. She knew the way you know your own name. Her mother who hid her bleeding fingers in her apron rather than be pitied. Her father who would rather die in a cold room than take a dollar he had not earned. Della Harmon would have stood in that doorway with her chin up and the door already closing, and she would have said, "We do not need charity, sir," in a voice that meant it, and she would have meant it all the way down to the floor with no floor. "You made it a bargain," Evelyn said. The fight had gone out of her voice. What was left was quieter and worse. "So we could take it. I made it a thing you could say yes to," he said, "without it costing you the only thing you had left, which was your pride. Yes." She sat in the wagon and could not make herself get down. The locket was hard in her hand. The house was bright in front of her, and she did not have any more a single true thing she could say about the man beside her, or the marriage she had crossed a country to make, and that more than the cold, more than the dark, more than the long drop, she could no longer see was the thing that frightened her. "Come inside," he said, gentler than he had said anything yet, "before you freeze. You can hate me warm as easy as cold." So she went inside, because there was nowhere else. There never had been. That was the whole shape of her life if you looked at it straight. And she was a girl who looked at things straight. The door opened before they reached it. A woman stood in it with the light behind her, an older woman in a clean dark dress and an apron, hair gone to iron, a face built for kindness and worn that way. She had a lamp in her hand and a word already on her mouth, and the word died there when she saw who came up the steps behind Silas Calloway. "Mr. Calloway." She recovered fast. Her eyes went over Evelyn, once the dust, the red coat gone gray, with the carpet bag, and Evelyn watched the woman do the arithmetic and arrive all at once at the answer. "Oh," she said, soft. "Oh, you have brought." "My wife," Silas said. "Mrs. Brennan, this is Evelyn. Evelyn Cora Brennan. She runs the house. She has run it longer than I have deserved her to." "Wife." Cora Brennan said the word like a coin she was testing with a tooth. Then she put both her hands together at her waist, and her face broke open into something so warm and so without suspicion that Evelyn felt her own eyes sting, which made her furious because she had not cried at the bank, and she had not cried on the train, and she would not cry now at the first kind face in 2,000 miles. "Well," Cora said, "well, you poor cold thing, come in. Come in out of it. You look near walk to death, and there is no call for that in this house, none at all." "Mr. Calloway, the East Room." "The East Room," he agreed. "It will want a fire built, and it will get one. Come, child." And the old woman took the carpet bag out of Evelyn's hands before Evelyn knew it was gone, the way you take a weight from someone who has carried it too long to fill it anymore, and steered her in by the elbow into a hall with a floor like dark water and a light above it that scattered itself into pieces, and Evelyn went where she was steered because her legs had stopped taking orders from her. She did not see the brothers go. Gabriel somewhere off into the house, loud even in the way he was quiet, the youngest one. She turned her head once on the stairs, and he was at the bottom of them, in the hall, standing with his hat in his two hands, the way a man stands at a thing he is not sure he is allowed near, and he was looking up at her, and when her eyes found his, he did not look away the way a stranger looks away. He held it, one breath, and then Cora's voice was at her ear about the fire and the warming pan, and the stairs turned, and he was gone. She did not have his name yet. She wanted you to notice that she did not have his name yet. It will matter which brother spoke first and which one watched. The room they put her in was bigger than the whole flat in Boston. She stood in the middle of it after Cora had gone and turned in a slow circle and could not make it be real. A fire already taking in a stone hearth, a bed with 4 posts and quilts thick as a man's arm. Windows tall and beyond them the valley going down into the blue dark and far below small, as fallen stars the lights of the cabins where men she had not met yet were eating suppers paid for by all of this. There were towels by a basin. There was water still warm. There were clothes laid out across the foot of the bed, a nightgown of soft white linen, and a wrapper of gray wool. Both of them cut for a woman, both of them clean, both of them not hers. She picked up the wrapper before she could stop herself. It was good wool, better than anything she had ever owned. It smelled faintly of cedar and of a sachet gone old, the smell of a thing folded away and kept. "Whose are these?" she said when Cora came back with the warming pan. The old woman's hands went still for the smallest moment over the bed. Just a moment. But Evelyn was good at faces and better at hands. Her mother had taught her that the hands tell what the face has learned to hide, and she saw the small, still moment and put it in her ledger. "Miss Marin's," Cora said, "his sister." She slid the warming pan between the sheets and did not look up while she said the rest of it, which was how Evelyn knew the rest of it was the kind of thing you say to the bedclothes. She lived here some years before. She had a way of filling a room, that girl. You will hear her name in this house, and you should not be afraid of it. They do not say it enough if you ask me, which you did not. Where is she now? Gone 2 years this winter, Cora said. The fever, it came up the mountain the one way the cold cannot, on a man who did not know he carried it, and it took her in 11 days, and it did not take anyone else, which the youngest one has never once forgiven it for. She straightened the quilt with a hand that pressed harder than it needed to. There, you sleep. You will feel different about all of it in the morning. People always do. Morning is the one honest hour. She went. The door closed soft behind her, and Evelyn stood alone in a dead woman's wrapper in a room the size of her old life, and that should have been the strangest thing about the night. It was not. The strangest thing was the painting. She found it because she could not sleep. Of course, she could not sleep. Who could? And she had taken a candle and gone walking the upstairs hall in her stocking feet, the way she had walked the cold stair, well, in Boston, reading an advertisement 11 times because she was a girl who walked when she could not think sitting down. The hall was long. The walls held pictures, landscapes, mostly a mountain that was this mountain a river, and then between 2 doors in a frame darker than the rest, a face. A woman. Young. Honey hair gone loose the way hair goes when a painter wants you to think the wind has just touched it. A jaw with a set to it that the painter had not softened because some painters are honest in the eyes. Evelyn lifted the candle and stood there in the empty hall in a dead woman's clothes and looked at the eyes in the painting, and her own went cold all the way down because she knew them. She knew them because she had seen them in her mother's hand mirror her whole life. The woman in the frame was not her. Of course she was not her. The chin was a degree sharper, the hair a shade darker, the painter's year was a decade old at least. But anyone who walked this hall with a candle and saw that face and then saw Evelyn Harmon would have stopped, would have looked twice, would have felt the small cold thing she felt now standing there, which was the feeling of being a copy of something you have only just learned existed. Marin, the sister. Gone 2 years this winter, and the clothes on the foot of her bed cut for a woman the size of the woman in this frame who was near enough the size of her. She heard the inside of her own head start to talk too fast. She knew the sound. It was the sound it made on the 11th reading of the advertisement, the sound it made on the train when she could not remember her father's face and panic that she had already lost it. The sound that says this is not, this cannot be. Why would a man advertise across a country for a stranger and then dress her in his dead sisters? No. Stop. You are tired. You are frightened. You are seeing a thing because you are tired. That is all it is, except she was good at faces. That was the trouble. Her mother had made her good at faces, and she could not unmake it now in a hall at night with a candle looking at a woman who was almost her. She did not sleep that night. She would tell you that herself years on a porch you have not seen yet, with silver in her hair and her hand in another hand. She did not sleep that first night, and it was not the strange bed, and it was not the wolves she thought she heard, and it was not even the painting in the end. It was the letter. She had it still. Of course she had it. A girl does not cross a country on the strength of a piece of paper and then leave the paper behind. It was in the carpet bag, folded into the lining where she had put it, the way you put a thing you mean to keep, and somewhere in the smallest cold hour, she got up off the unslept bed and lit the candle again, and took the letter out and unfolded it on her knees by the fire to read it, the way she had read the advertisement until the words stopped being words and started being true. She had read it 40 times before Colorado. She knew its shape the way she knew her father's cough. But she had never, not once, in all 40 times, read it in the same room as the thing in Silas Calloway's hand. There had been a list on the kitchen table downstairs. She had passed it, coming up a market list in Cora's keeping with a line at the bottom, added in a different hand, a hard, plain, blunt hand, the hand of a man who learned his letters late and never forgave them, 3 words and a name. S. Calloway. She had seen it the way you see a thing you are not looking at. And now she sat by the fire with the letter open on her knee, the letter that had promised her a home, the letter signed at the bottom in a fine and careful and educated hand, a hand taught early and taught well, loops and a long confident tail on the eye of the name. And she looked at the signature on the letter that had brought her 2,000 miles. And the signature said Silas Calloway. And it was not Silas Calloway's hand. Twist the third. She felt it go through her like the cold off the creek, slow and total. Because a man who signs a market list in 3 blunt letters does not write a 2-page letter in a scholar's hand. One of those was a lie, and she had married the blunt one, which meant the careful one. The one who had actually chosen her words for her across a country, who had known what to say to a proud man's proud daughter to make her say yes, who had reached into a cold stairwell in Boston with exactly the right sentence, the way you reach for a frightened animal with exactly the right hand, was someone else. She sat very still by the fire with the letter on her knee and the painting 2 doors down, in a dead woman's wrapper around her shoulders, and she did not yet know what this bright and lying house had been built to keep buried. But she had begun in the smallest cold hour to understand that she had been brought up this mountain on purpose by a hand she had not met for a reason no one had said out loud. And when she found out what the reason was, everything she thought she knew about Hollow Mountain and about the 3 silent men who had stood in a line to meet her, and about which one of them she should have been afraid of, was going to come apart in her hands like wet paper. Morning, Cora had said, was the one honest hour. Cora was not quite right about that either. Morning came up the valley like something poured. Light filled the low places. First the stream, the cabin smoke, the long pastures she had not been able to see in the dark, and then it climbed the hill and came through the tall windows of the room that was not hers, and Evelyn Harmon stood at the glass in a dead woman's wrapper, with the unread night still in her eyes, and watched a kingdom she had been lied into wake up beneath her. She had decided one thing in the cold hour, just one. She was good at one thing at a time. She was going to find out whose hand wrote that letter. There was a knock. Cora, with a tray and a face arranged into the particular cheer of a woman who has decided you will eat whether you want to or not. Eggs, bacon, bread still warm enough to steam when she broke it. Evelyn had not eaten like that in a year, and her body betrayed her and ate every bite while her mind stood off to the side with its arms crossed, taking notes. "Where is he?" she said. "Which he?" Cora said. "There are a quantity of them in this house, and they scatter at first light like quail." "The one I married. Down at the timber. He goes before the sun most days. Works it with the men which the men have never once gotten used to and never once will. Cora set a folded paper by the plate, the way you set down a thing you have been told to set down. He left you that. It was 3 words. The blunt hand. The hand off the market list. Take the day. Mrs. Brennan will answer what she can. And under it, the single hard letter. Evelyn looked at it a long time. Because here was the proof in her 2 hands, now not a guess in a cold hour. The man who had signed her here in a scholar's loops could not, would not, did not write like this. This was a hand that hated paper. This was a hand that had learned its letters in a hurry late from someone who did not have time to be gentle about it. Mrs. Brennan, she said, how does Mr. Calloway write? Badly, Cora said without looking up from the fire she was building. Like a man fighting a wasp. Why? No reason. That, Cora said, is the first lie you have told in this house, and it was not a good one. You will want to do better than that here. They are a quiet family, but they are not a stupid one. Evelyn let that sit. She was learning the old woman the way you learn a stair that creaks. Then I will go down to the timber, she said, and ask him my no reason myself. It is a mile. I have legs. It is a mile of mountain. They are mountain legs now, Evelyn said as of last night. And Cora made a sound that in a less dignified woman would have been a laugh and did not stop her. The walk down was the first time she saw it whole. The road she could see, now in daylight, graded and drained and walked. The pastures with cattle in them, fat ones, not the half-wild kind, a poor man scratches a living off of. Cabins with glass in the windows. A garden gone to autumn but plainly tended. And men. Men who touched their hats to her, a stranger in a dead woman's gray wool, men who already somehow knew the way, a mountain knows weather, that the quiet eldest Calloway had come back up the track with a wife. The mill she heard before the trees let her see it. A shriek and a thunder, saws and shouted numbers, and the long groan of a log going where men wanted it. And then the trees opened and she stopped. It was not an operation a poor man hid. It was an operation a frightened man hid. There is a difference, and she stood there, learning it. Water turning a wheel taller than the barn, stacked lumber and walls, wagons being loaded, 30 men if there was one. And in the middle of all of it, with his coat off in the cold, his sleeves shoved up his scarred forearms, his shoulders set against a log that did not want to go, was the man whose name was on her paper and not in her letter. "Crow your left," somebody yelled, and her heart did a stupid thing before her mind reminded it whose business this was. And Silas Calloway moved fast the way a still man moves exactly once, and the log went and the danger went with it, and he straightened and wiped his face with the back of a hand and saw her standing at the edge of his secret in his sister's clothes. He did not smile. You know by now he was careful with those. But something in him stopped working for a second. He said something to a man beside him. He came across the yard taking his coat off the rail as he passed it, and the men found things to look at that were not the two of them and did not find them very well. "You walked down," he said. "You wrote me a note." "I did." "With your own hand." A small pause. The saws behind him. "It is a poor hand," he said. "I know it. You do not have to make a study of it." "I have made a study of it." She had the note in her fist. She had the letter on her close, the way you carry a thing you are not finished with, and she did not take it out, not yet, because she was a girl who kept a ledger, and you do not show the ledger before you know what you are buying. "Walk with me, Mr. Calloway. You have 30 men and a wheel that turns itself. The mill will survive you for 10 minutes. Walk with me." His jaw did the thing his sister's jaw did in the painting. The set the painter had been honest about. And he walked with her. He took her up a path off the yard that climbed to a clearing, and from the clearing you could see all of it. At once the house, the mill, the pastures, the cabins, the whole bright lie of it laid out under the cold sun. And she understood he had brought her here on purpose, that this was the place he took a thing he meant to say once and not again. "Ask," he said. "You did not write to me." It was not a question, and she did not let it be one. She watched his face the way her mother had taught her, and the face did the small wrong thing the hands had done over the bed last night. The half second of still that is louder than shouting. No, he said. Say it plain. You owe me plain. You have owed me plain since a clearing at the bottom of this mountain. I did not write the letter that brought you here. Quiet, down where his voice lived. I signed nothing. I chose no words. The first I knew of Evelyn Harmon of Boston was a week before the coach, when it was already done, and there was a draft already sent and a woman already coming up, the only road there is. His eyes came to hers and stayed, which she would learn was the most he ever gave anyone the staying. I have never lied to you. I told you that the first night, and I will tell it to you now in daylight, where lies do worse. I let you think the hand was mine because the alternative was a longer truth and you were cold and frightened, and I am not good at long truths and clearings. Then whose? And here is where the second turn of it came, the one I told you would come, and it did not come from his mouth. It came from the trees. Mine, the youngest one, the one whose name she still did not have. He came up the path the way he did everything quiet, last his hat in his two hands, and he stood at the edge of the clearing with the look of a man walking up to a thing he has been dreading so long, the dread has worn smooth. You, she said. Wyatt. He gave her his name himself. He gave it like a man handing over a knife handle first. Wyatt Calloway. I wrote it, every word. I signed his name because no one would have answered mine, and because it had to be his name for reasons that are not mine too. For reasons. He stopped, started again smaller. I wrote you. I am the one. If you are going to be angry at a Calloway for a letter, you have been angry at the wrong one since the bottom of the mountain. She stood between the two of them, in the high cold clearing, in their dead sister's gray wool, and felt the whole shape of the thing tilt. Why, she said. To Wyatt, only to Wyatt now. Because he was going to die alone up here, Wyatt said, and he did not say it cruel. He said it the way you say a thing you have watched coming for years and could not stop, and pretend it was a choice. Because Marin told me before the fever when she still could, she said, Wyatt, he has built a house no one is allowed to live in. Do not let him do it for the rest of his life. His voice did the jagged thing a voice does when it is carrying more than it was built for. So when I heard there was a man dying in Boston who once did a thing for us, and that man had a daughter with no people coming and a debt no one could carry, I thought, there is a way to pay two debts with one letter and let nobody's pride die of it. He looked at his brother and not at her for the last of it. I should have told you both. I know it. I have known it since the coach. I am telling you now because she is owed it and you are owed it, and I am tired of being the only one who knows what this house is for. Silas had gone very still, the kind of still that is not calm. Evelyn had two brothers in front of her and a fault line opening between them she had walked straight into and could not now walk back out of. In the strange thing, the thing she would not understand until much later, was that the loudest feeling in her was not anger. It was that someone had read her across 2,000 miles exactly right. A man dying in Boston, she said, slow, who once did a thing for you. What thing? And neither of them answered fast enough, and the not answering was an answer, and she filed it in the ledger and read, and she said, I am going back to the house now. I am going to think. Do not either of you follow me up that path. You gave me a word about that Mr. Calloway. Start keeping it today. She walked back up alone. They let her. It was the first promise of his she watched him keep, and she made herself notice it because she was a girl who kept a ledger. And you write down the credits too, or the ledger lies. The days after that did not go the way she had braced for. She had braced for a siege. She got instead a strange and stubborn courtship of the only kind those men knew, which was not flowers and not words. It was work. Silas did not apologize again. He did the thing instead. The second morning there was a chair set by the library window where the light was best, and a stack of ledgers on the desk, and a note in the blunt hand. These are the books. If you mean to spend 6 months here, you should know what you are inside of. No man should be married to a house he is not allowed to understand. She stood in the door of that room a long time before she went in, because she knew what it was. It was not a chore, it was a key, and he was holding it out, handle first, the way his brother had held out his name, and she did not trust either of them yet, but she had begun against the whole grain of her sense to be unable to stop respecting them. She read the books. She was good at books. Her mother had built her for exactly this and never known what she was building her for. And what the books told her in their long, honest columns was that she had married into something far stranger than money. Timber going to Denver and farther. Contracts with seals she did not know. Wages, and the wages were fair. Fairer than fair, written in a hand she now knew was Wyatt's. Cattle. And then a set of figures that did not match the rest, a column kept apart, a place called only the high claim silver, and beside it nothing. No buyer, no contract, no thread out to the world. What is the high claim? She asked Wyatt because it was Wyatt's hand on the page, and Wyatt was, she had decided, the one who answered. A hole in the ground that has tried to kill 4 men, he said. Mine to run. I run it badly, by which I mean I run it like the men in it are men, and not figures, which Gabriel says is why we will die poor. You will not die poor. I have read the books. You could not die poor if you set the books on fire. That, Wyatt said, is the first kind thing you have said to a Calloway since Boston, and she heard too late that it had been won, and she did not take it back. Gabriel was the harder weather. Gabriel did not want her there, and did not pretend he did, which she came slowly to prefer to the kind of man who pretends. He found her at the books one afternoon and stood in the door with his arms crossed and said, he told you the figures. He never tells anyone the figures. He told the house's wife about the house. That is not a scandal, Mr. Calloway. You are not the house's wife. You are a 6-month arrangement in my sister's coat. It was meant to land hard, and it did. Do not learn this place like it is yours. People who learn this place leave with pieces of it. I have no use for your timber, she said, or your cattle, or your hole in the ground that kills men. I have a use for understanding what I have been walked into, because I was walked into it in the dark by a hand that was not even the one I am angry at, and I do not intend to be in the dark twice. She closed the ledger. She did it slow so it would be heard. You do not have to like me, Gabriel. You will find I do not require it. But you will not stand in a doorway and tell me that wanting to understand a thing is the same as wanting to steal it. I had that sermon from a bank in Boston. It was wrong then. He looked at her a long moment. Something moved behind the weather of his face that she could not name and did not trust. He left without the last word, which from Gabriel, she would learn, was the loudest thing he could do. The chemistry, if you want to call it that, and she would not have not yet not out loud, came in pieces too small to defend against. It came as a wildflower late and stubborn left on the windowsill of the library, where the light was best by no hand that ever owned it. It came as a chair mended without a word, the chair she had taken to using its loose leg quiet now. It came as a night she could not sleep again, and went down for water, and found Silas at the kitchen table in the one lamp cleaning a wound on his own forearm, alone badly the way a man does a thing he has decided no one should have to help him with. You will scar that worse than it has to, she said from the door. It is my arm to scar. It is, yes, and I have set 100 of them, and watched men keep arms that should have come off because no one made them sit still, and I am not going back to bed to listen to you do it wrong through a floor. She crossed the kitchen before her sense could file an objection. Sit, give it here. I will not be gentle and I will not be long. He gave her the arm. That was the whole of it. He gave her the arm. A man who had given no one anything since a fever 2 winters ago put his scarred forearm into the hands of a woman in his dead sister's wrapper at a kitchen table at the smallest hour, and was still and let her work. And she felt his pulse under her fingers go from a hammer to something slower, and neither of them said one word, and the fire popped and the wind leaned on the house, and a thing moved between them in that kitchen that could not afterward move back, and not one improper word was spoken, and none had to be. "There," she said when it was done and bound. Her voice had gone strange. She heard it go strange and could not catch it. "Do not lift with it for a week. You will not listen." "I will not," he agreed. "Then why do I bother?" "Because you are the kind that bothers," he said. "I worked that out the first night. In the wagon, you bother." She went up the stairs too fast and stood in the dark of the room that was Marin's room and put her hand flat on her own chest the way her mother used to put a hand flat on the table to keep the room from tipping. And she said to herself in the jagged voice the inside of her head used at the worst hours, "You are here for 6 months. You are here on a paper. You are not. You will not. Except," and she could not finish the "except," and the not being able to finish it was the most frightened she had been since the clearing. Then the men came. They came at the gray edge of a morning, 10 days on 3 of them, dusty and hard, riding up the graded road like they owned the gate they had not been let through. Evelyn was at the window when Cora's fist hit her door, and Cora's voice through the wood had lost all its honest cheer. "Get up! There are men! They want him, and they are not asking nice." She went down in the gray wool with her hair undone because there was no time to be a lady about it. Silas was already in the hall. Gabriel a half step behind him, with a stillness on him she had not seen, the dangerous kind, the kind that came down over the noise of him like a hand over a flame. Wyatt at the foot of the stairs with a rifle held, the way a man holds a thing he hates and is very good at. The man in front had a face built out of grievance. "We want what is ours, Calloway," he said. "You bought the Barlow claim out from under us with what you knew, and we did not. That land is worth 10 of what you paid the day the rail comes through, and you knew it, and you let us sell it blind." "I paid what it was worth the day you sold it," Silas said, down where his voice lived. "It is recorded. It is legal. You wanted cash for your debts, and I had cash." "Legal," the man said and spat on the floor of the hall, "is not the same as square. 50,000 makes it square. Or we start with the timber, one stack at a time, until you find it in you to be fair." And Evelyn Harmon, 22, a daughter of Boston who had crossed a country on a lying letter and been at this house 11 days, stepped down off the last stair into the middle of it before any sense in her could write an objection. "Get out of this house." Every man in the hall turned. The grievance face came around to her and went over the undone hair and the gray wool and curled. Did not know Calloway had himself a... "You will not finish that," she said. "You are standing in a hall. You are not led into threatening men over a thing a court already settled, and you have made the single error of doing it in front of someone who has read the books. There is no 50,000 here for you. There is the door, and there is the count of 10. And Mr. Calloway is going to give you the count, and I am going to give you the door, and the only choice you have left in the world is whether you walk through it on your feet." The hall had gone very quiet. "One," Silas said. He had moved while she talked. He was beside her now, not in front, beside. She felt it the way you feel weather change. "Two." They did not stay for 10. They went slamming the great door hard enough to shiver the glass, and the sound of their horses fell away down the graded road into the trees, and the hall let his breath out all at once. And Silas Calloway turned on her with something on his face she had not seen there before, and it was not gratitude. "Do not," he said, low, rough at the edges in a way it had never been. "Do not ever again put yourself between me and armed men. Not ever. Not for any reason your bothering heart invents. They were 3 to your 1. They were mine to stand in front of. I am not going to hide upstairs in a dead woman's clothes while men threaten you in your own hall," she said, and heard what she had said a half-second after she said it, the dead woman's clothes, and saw it land on all 3 of them like a stone in still water, and could not take it back, and did not, because it was true, and she was done, after 11 days being walked into things in the dark. He looked at her. The hall held still around them, and whatever he had been going to say, he did not say it. He reached out instead, the bound arm, the one she had stitched at a kitchen table, and he closed his hand once around her shoulder, brief, hard, the way a man grabs a thing to be sure it is real and then makes himself let it go. You bother, he said. It came out wrecked. I told you I would not stop. Gabriel was looking at the two of them from across the hall, with the dangerous stillness gone off him, and something far more frightening to her in its place, which was that he had stopped being sure he disliked her, and she could see him hate that he had stopped. Wyatt set the rifle down. He came and stood close, his voice for her and Silas and not the room. They will be back, he said. Men like that do not come once. And there is a thing you both need to hear before they do, and I have been the only one carrying it long enough. He looked at Silas. He looked longer at Evelyn, at the face that was almost his sister's face, and the look had grief in it that was old and new at once. Those men did not find their way to our gate on a guess. Somebody pointed them up our road. Somebody who has wanted this mountain a long time and who has reasons that go back further than any of you think, back past the rail, back past the Barlow claim, back to Marin, back to our father. Wyatt, Siwa said. A warning or a plea. With those two, it was hard even now to tell them apart. No, Wyatt said. She is owed it. You keep saying you have never lied to her. Then stop keeping the one thing from her that is going to walk up that road with a torch one of these nights and look her in the face. The fire cracked in the great hearth. Outside, far down a wagon bell. The ordinary sound of an ordinary morning on a mountain that was not ordinary and never had been. Evelyn stood in the hall in the clothes of a dead woman she more and more resembled between three brothers and the fault line she had walked into, and felt the floor of the whole story she had been told tilt one more degree toward the truth. Who, she said, who has wanted this mountain since before your father? Say the name. And Wyatt opened his mouth to say it. And the great door that the Barlow men had slammed, not 10 minutes gone, opened again without a knock. And a woman stood in it with the gray morning behind her, in a riding habit that had cost more than the whole flat in Boston, and a smile that had been sharpened on something for a long time. I do beg your pardon, the woman said, and did not. Her eyes went around the hall and found Evelyn last, and stayed there going over the undone hair, the dead woman's wool, the whole of her, and the smile widened the way a crack widens. I had heard the most remarkable thing in town, that Silas Calloway had got himself a wife. I told my father it could not possibly be true. She came in. Nobody had asked her to. And here she is, in Marin's gray wool no less. How? How perfectly his family always finds a use for a woman with nowhere else to go. Nobody breathed. You will have to forgive my manners, she said into the silence she had made, and put out one gloved hand to Evelyn the way you put out a hand you expect kissed. We have not met. I am a thorn, the name your husband's brother could not make himself say. And I think before this is over, you and I are going to know each other very well. Her name was Cordelia Thorne. She said it the way some people say a deed. Unwise, a thing already signed, a thing already theirs. And she stood in the hall with her gloves still out and her smile still sharpened, and waited for Evelyn to take the hand, because in Cordelia Thorne's world, the hand was always taken. Evelyn did not take it. You will forgive me, she said. I have just thrown 3 armed men out of this house, and my arithmetic is not done settling. I find I have no hand free for a 4th thing that walked in without knocking. The smile flickered, just once, like a lamp in a draft. Then it came back wider, because Cordelia Thorne had been built by a man who never let a flicker show, and she had learned the lesson down to the bone. My father is Abel Thorne, she said. He owns the largest cattle interest in this territory. He owned it when these men's father was alive, and he owns it now that he is not, and he will own it long after this charming. A glance at the gray wool. Arrangement has run its little 6 months. Cordelia, Silas said, low, a door closing. I only came to offer my congratulations, Silas. She turned the full sun of her attention on him, And it was a terrible thing to watch a woman who had clearly aimed her whole life at this man and missed and never forgiven the target for it. And to see her, the papers are right, she does look like Marin. How? How comforting that must be for you, to advertise across a country and have the post deliver you a copy. The hall did not breathe. And Evelyn, who was good at faces, watched Wyatt's go white and Gabriel's go to the dangerous stillness, and Silas's do nothing at all, which she had learned by now was the loudest thing his face could do. And she understood in that one struck second that this woman had just said the cruelest true thing anyone could have said in this house and had enjoyed the saying of it and had come up a mountain at dawn to do exactly that and nothing else. You should go, Evelyn said, while the going is still your idea. I will go. Cordelia drew the glove back on slow finger by finger, the way you sheathe a thing. But you should know something, since no one in this house of quiet men will tell you, and you seem the type who would rather be told. She paused at the great door she had opened without leave. Ask them how their father died. Ask them whose cattle were on the land the night it happened. Ask them why a girl who looked just like you is 2 years in the ground. The smile one last time, the worst one, and when they will not answer, and they will not. Remember who offered. She went. The door stood open behind her on the gray morning, and nobody moved to close it for a long moment, and the cold came in. And that was the cold the rest of this is built on, so feel it now. Wyatt closed the door. He put his back against it like a man holding a thing shut from the inside. Now, Evelyn said. Evelyn said. To all three, her voice did not shake. She had decided in the clearing days ago that it would not, and she held the decision now with both hands. Now somebody finishes the sentence that woman keeps interrupting. Whose name? Whose cattle? How did your father die? And it was Silas who answered. Not Wyatt this time. Silas, who gave people the staying of his eyes and almost nothing else, took her by the look and did not let go, and said the longest true thing she had heard him say. Abel Thorne wanted this mountain before there was a Calloway on it worth the name. There is water here that does not fail in a dry year. He has been trying to take it 40 years by every road there is. He could not buy it, so he tried the other ways. His jaw did the thing the painting was honest about. My father did not freeze in a storm by accident the winter I was a boy. He was run off the first land we ever held by men. Thorne paid to do. It turned out into the worst night of that year, with what was left of us and the mountain finished. What Thorne started. It took him before the spring, but it did not take me. A man came out into that same storm and found me at the bottom of the drift, a half-grown boy, near dead in the snow, and carried me back through it on his own back and warmed me and asked nothing. He did not come out of that night whole either. The cold he took carrying me, he carried the rest of his life. His voice went down to almost nothing. Years on, I learned his name. Josiah Harmon, your father, before he was anyone's father, before Boston, before you were ever born. The floor of the whole story went out from under her at last, and she had been waiting for it for days, and it still took her breath. He never spoke of the West, she said. Not to them, to the cold hall, to the girl on a Boston stair reading an advertisement 11 times. He had a tin box. He would not open it. I thought it was shame. I thought he had failed out here the way he failed out of everything later. I never once thought it was a boy he carried out of the snow on his own back and never told, because that was the kind of stop. He never said one word. He would not, Silas said. I tried to repay it for years. I could not find him. He had gone so far east and gone so quiet a man could not follow it. He looked at Wyatt then. The fault line between them was still there, but something had changed across it. Until my brother found him dying in a city with a daughter and a debt and a pride that would not take $1 straight, and did the only thing that would let me pay it. She turned to Wyatt. Wyatt, who had reached the one right sentence into a Boston stairwell from the far side of the country. Wyatt, who had not been the cruelty. Wyatt, who had been the whole time the kindness wearing another man's name. "You did not write me to give your brother a wife," she said, slow, the ledger in her head going very still. "You wrote me to pay your father's man back. And you signed in Silas's name because the debt was Silas's to carry and he would never have asked." "Both," Wyatt said. His voice did the jagged thing. "I am not going to stand here and tell you it was only the noble half. I wanted my brother to stop dying in a full house. And I wanted to pay the man who carried him out of the snow. And there was one letter that did both. I am sorry it had a lie folded in it. I am not sorry I wrote it. I have tried to be, and I cannot get there." She stood in the hall a long time. The Barlow men's spit was still on the floor. Cordelia Thorne's perfume still in the air like something gone slightly off. And three brothers waiting on a girl from Boston to say the thing that decided what the rest of it would be. "My father is dying," she said, "because a town turned a man out in the snow once, and he went into that snow after a boy who was not his, and the cold got into his lungs and never fully left." Her voice broke on it, and she let it. There was no shame left to keep it whole for. "He has been paying for that one night for the rest of his life, and he never named the boy, not once, not to me, not to anyone. And I have been angry at the wrong Calloway, in the wrong house, about the wrong lie since the bottom of this mountain." She wiped her face once hard the way you wipe a slate. "I am not angry anymore. I am something worse. I am in it." Nobody said anything. Wyatt's eyes were wet. Gabriel had turned half away the way a man turns when his face is about to do a thing he has not given it leave to do. And Silas crossed the hall to her, the bound arm, the careful distance gone now, and he did not take her hand the way Cordelia had wanted hers taken. He put his rough hand against the side of her face the way you steady a thing you have decided you are not going to drop. And she let him, and the fire cracked, and not one improper word was spoken, and none was needed because the whole hall had just become something it had not been an hour before. What came after came fast. Abel Thorne did not lose slow. He bailed the Barlow men out before the cell was warm. They started the work they had promised, one stack at a time, a wagon of cut lumber gone in the night, a fence cut, a calf hamstrung in a way meant to be found. Eli Mercer, the foreman, doubled the men on the road and slept less than any of them, and said less than that. And the threats stopped being threats and became a hand closing slow. The first crisis came on a mountain road at the gray edge of a day. They were riding back from town, Silas driving the rifle across his knees, Evelyn beside him because she would not be left at the house anymore, and they had stopped pretending she could be. A shot took a branch a hand's width from his head, then another into the wagon side. And then the trees gave up the Barlow brothers, with their guns already up, and the older one with the grievance face stepped into the road and said the only thing he had ever known how to say, which was that 50,000 still made it square, and they would take it in something else now. It was Gabriel who came out of the timber behind them. Loud Gabriel, hot Gabriel, the brother who had stood in a doorway and told her not to learn a place that was not hers. He came out fast and wrong the way he did everything, and he put himself between the guns and the wagon before any sense in him could file the objection. And when the grievance man fired, Gabriel was where Silas would have been, and the shot that should have found the eldest Calloway found the middle one through the shoulder and put him in the road. After that, it was Eli Mercer and 4 men out of the trees, and the thing was over. In the time it takes a heart to do something it will never undo, the Barlows down and disarmed, the grievance man cursing into the dirt, and Evelyn on her knees in the road with Gabriel's blood coming up through her 2 hands, the hands her mother had built for exactly this and never known why, pressing the wound. The way you press a thing you will not let leave, telling him he was not allowed, he had not earned the right. He did not get to be the one who proved it. "You bother," Gabriel said up at her gray, trying to make it a joke and not getting there. He said, "You bother." He did not say, "Be quiet and let me work." He did not say you would be the one with your hands in me in a road. I said, "Be quiet." I do not dislike you, Gabriel said like a man getting a thing said before something can stop him saying it. I want that on a record somewhere. I tried very hard and I could not keep it up. Noted, she said, and her voice broke clean through. Now bleed less. You stupid loud man. You do not get to make me cry in a road in front of your brothers. I have a reputation. He lived. She would not let him do otherwise. They carried him up the mountain in the bed of the wagon with her hand still on him the whole way, and that night in the lamp with Gabriel, breathing wrong, but breathing. Silas stood in the door of the sick room and looked at her with everything his face usually did, nothing about, and he said the thing in the doorway he had ridden a country of silence to be able to say. I did not bring you up this mountain for the debt, he said. Wyatt did, but I am the one keeping you, and I have known it since a kitchen table in a stitched arm, and I have been a coward about the saying of it the way I have been a coward about every soft thing since the fever. I am not asking you to stay for 6 months. I am asking you to stop counting them. You are asking that in a doorway, she said. Her voice would not hold, and she let it not hold. Your brother is bleeding through a bandage I tied, and you pick a doorway. I am best at the hard things in doorways, he said. You said that to me about a clearing. I am saying it back about a door. That is not a romance, Silas Calloway. That is a man explaining his own poor design. It is the truest one I have. A breath, the whole of him in it. Stay, not for the paper, not for your father. For the reason I cannot put in a hand as bad as mine. Stay because everywhere else is a house I am not in, and I have decided late, like a man who learns his letters late, that I do not want to eat alone in this one anymore. And she crossed the room away from the door. He was no good past, and she put her forehead against his chest. The way you set down a weight you have carried so long. You forgot it was a choice, and his arms came around her careful, like a man who has finally let himself reach for a thing, and the lamp burned low, and Gabriel breathed his wrong, stubborn, living breath in the bed behind them. And that was all of it, and it was enough, and it was clean, and it was theirs. But Abel Thorne was not done. I told you he did not lose slow. He had one more road, and it ran through the inside of the house. It was Cora who broke it. Cora Brennan, who had taken the bag out of Evelyn's hands the first cold night. The way you take a weight from someone too tired to feel it. Evelyn found her in the kitchen at the worst hour, with her honest face gone to pieces, and the truth came out of her sideways and shaking, the way the truth comes out of a person who has carried a wrong thing too long and finally cannot. She had been Thorne's, from before Evelyn, from before the wedding. A widow with a son in a city, in a debt of her own, and a man who paid debts in exchange for a small thing, only a small thing, only a word now and then about a road, about a wagon, about when the men were on the timber and when they were not. She had told herself it was small. She had told herself the Calloways had so much. Until the Barlow brothers came up a road she had named the Hour of. Until the shoulder of the loud one she had watched grow into a hard, kind man bled into the dirt because of a thing she had said for her own boy's sake. And she could not, after that, hold it inside one more night. I will get my things, Cora said. Wrecked, done. You do not have to say it. I will go down the mountain the way I should never have come up it. And here is the turn that the whole of this was built to reach, so listen. Evelyn did not let her go. Sit down, she said. And her voice was not soft, and it was not cruel. It was the voice her mother used over a wound that had to be cleaned before it could close. You sold a road to keep a boy. I crossed a country and married a stranger to keep a father. I am not going to stand in this kitchen and pretend I do not know exactly the shape of the thing that made you do it. She put the kettle on because her hands needed a true thing to do. You are going to tell all of it. To Silas, to a sheriff if it comes to that, and then you are going to stay in this house and earn back a thing money never bought and Thorne never owned. And that is harder than leaving, and that is why you are going to do it. Leaving is what he would let you do. Staying is the thing that costs. Cora wept then, the way you weep when the punishment is mercy and the mercy is heavier than the punishment. And Evelyn stood beside her and did not say it was all right because it was not, and did not say it was nothing because it was not. And that was the whole of what made it forgiveness instead of a lie. What Cora knew finished Thorne, where the Barlow men sheltered, whose hand had forged the papers the sheriff was about to find planted in a desk. The shape of a fire Thorne meant to set the night after the railroad vote went against him. They were ready for the fire because of a road sold and confessed. The mill burned. Thorne saw to that. But the men were out, everyone because they had been warned, and the Callaways had carried their people clear of it first and let the building go. And Silas stood in the heat of his own 10 years going up and said, only buildings come back the way other men say a prayer. And then Cordelia Thorne came up the mountain a second time, not at dawn, not sharpened. She came with a satchel of her father's forged papers and the map of his fire and her own name on a statement no daughter writes easy, and she put them in Evelyn's hands in the burn light and said the only soft thing Evelyn ever heard her say. You were right about me in the hall. I did think money bought the having of things. I watched it not buy him. Her father. She did not have to say which. And I watched it not buy you either, and you came up here with nothing. I cannot live in a house built on what mine is built on. I would rather be poor and able to sleep. Then go be that, Evelyn said, not unkind, just true. And do not let anyone tell you the leaving was the easy thing. It was not. I have done it. I know the weight. Cordelia almost smiled. The first one of hers that was not a blade. And she went down the mountain to a smaller life she chose, and that too is what this was built to show you, that a person can put down the thing that is breaking them, and the putting down is not weakness. It is the bravest arithmetic there is. Abel Thorne fell the way the tall and rotten always fall slow, and then all at once. Forged papers in a sheriff's hand, a daughter's statement, the Barlow men trading him for their own necks, his partners discovering all at the same convenient hour that they had urgent business elsewhere. They did not have to destroy him in the end. They made him something worse than destroyed. They made him not matter. Because while the courts did their slow work, the Callaways and Evelyn did the thing that finished it for good, and it was not a fight. It was a town. They did not rebuild the mill alone. They built it bigger, and they built a road to it and a school beside the road. And Evelyn taught the first letters in it herself to the children of the men in the cabins, and to Eli Mercer in the back row at night, a foreman 42 years old, learning his letters from a woman 22, because she had told him a man who could not read his own contracts was a man someone else was always reading them for. A church went up, a store, and over the next years a street with names on it. And the mountain that had been a fortress, one frightened man hid inside of, became a place a great many people were not afraid to live. And Thorne, who had wanted it empty enough to take, could not take a thing that full and that watched and that loved. He had wanted a mountain. He got a town that did not need him. There is no defeating a man more total than that. Her father came in the spring. Josiah Harmon, the man who had carried a boy out of the snow and never said. He was thin, and the cough had a floor under it, now a doctor in a clean room and a debt. That was rubble, and he came up the graded road in a wagon and saw the gate with the name worked in iron, and the school and the street and the man waiting at the top of it, who he had last seen as a half-grown boy he was sure he had failed to save. He did not know him at first. Then he did, and the two men looked at each other across all those years in a snowstorm, in a debt that had bent both their lives, and neither of them was any good with words, which is why they did not use any. Josiah Harmon put his hand on Silas Calloway's shoulder. Silas put his on Josiah's. And Evelyn watched her father, who had been small in Boston for 30 years, stand on that mountain full size again, the size he had been before her, and she understood at last what had been in the tin box he would not open, which was not shame. It was this. It had always been this. He had just had no way to get to it until his daughter wrote a lying letter to the top of it. They married again that summer. Not the quick, frightened thing at the bottom of the mountain, the other kind. In the open by the school she built with the men from the cabins and Cora in the front, and Gabriel standing up beside his brother with a stiff shoulder and a softer face, and Wyatt, who had written the letter giving her the small, honest speech he had always been better at than any of them. She did not wear gray wool, she wore her own. Marin's clothes she had folded away kindly and kept the way you keep a thing that belonged to someone who filled a room, and she had stopped somewhere in the building of the town, being a copy of anything. She had become the only one of herself there was on a mountain she had chosen on the second go, with her eyes open and the paper long since not the reason. You want to know how it ends? I will tell you because this is a story for people who have lived long enough to know that the end is the part that matters. It ends years on, many of them. The cough finally took her father, but late and gentle, and on the mountain, with his daughter's hand in his, and the school he could see from the window full of the noise of children who would all of them die able to read. Gabriel married a woman as loud as he was, and the two of them ran the mill, and the noise of that family could be heard, the men said from town. Wyatt never married. He built things instead, and read everything in the library twice, and was the one the children went to, all of them, every generation, because the man who had once written a lie to save his brother turned out to have nothing in him but the truth. And Silas and Evelyn grew old in the house that had been a fortress and was a home, slower both of them. Silver in her hair where the honey had been, his hands worse than ever, and still the steadiest thing she knew. They had a daughter and they named her Hope, because Evelyn said it plain when he asked, "That is what you handed me when I had none. That is what we built here," and the name was not too large for the girl. It never was. She grew into every inch of it. On the last evening I will give you, she is on the porch he built. The grandchildren are in the wild flowers below the school chasing something only children can see. Her hand is in his hand, the rough one, the one she stitched at a kitchen table a lifetime gone. And she is thinking about a clearing at the bottom of a mountain and a girl in a red coat with a carpet bag and a locket and nowhere on the earth to go but up. A girl who had been lied into a marriage to pay a debt she did not know her father carried. A girl who had been so sure that first cold night that morning was the one honest hour. It was not. Cora had been right and wrong both. Morning was not the honest hour. This was. This porch, these hands, this long, late, ordinary evening at the top of the only road there ever was. "What are you thinking?" he asks her. He still asks, after all of it. He still wants to know. "That I came up here with nothing," she says, "and that it was the day my life began, and that I would not change the lie that brought me because, look what we built out of it." He does not answer with words. He never did learn to be any good with them. He just closes his hand around hers, slow and certain, the way he has every evening of every year since. And below them, the children run through the flowers, and the mountain holds the light a little longer, the way it always has. And the woman who came west with a carpet bag and a debt watches the home she chose on the second go with her eyes open, and is after the whole long road of it exactly where she meant to be.